Hey guys, it's Randy with Lowbuck LS here again, and in this episode we're going to install this, it's the Walbro 525 liter per hour. They call it the Hellcat fuel pump because I guess it's the one that comes in the Hellcat, so that's it right there. So, and then I've got, well, here's the box. Should have the part number and stuff on there. It's F9000285, and I got it from Summit Racing. And then I got this. It's the 400 1168. It's the installation kit that comes with the filter and the hose and the little wire pigtail and stuff to put it in. So, but before we get going with that, let me show you why I need this new fuel pump. If you guys watched the last episode, you saw I put in a fuel pressure sensor in my truck here, and I got that logging. And so let's hop on the laptop now, and I'll show you what's happening to my fuel pressure when I start getting into boost here. So let's switch over to the laptop view now. Okay guys, so we got the laptop view going here, and I've got a log open of a full throttle test I did after I got that fuel pressure sensor installed. So if you look, let's start back just as we're getting into boost here. So we're at a map of 101, which is atmospheric. So this is just as we're starting to get into boost. You can see our throttle is 100% open, so it's a wide open throttle run. RPM, we're 2800 and climbing. You can see our fuel pressure is currently at 57.3, which we want it to be at 58 when it's at atmospheric, so that's about right. Our AFR, it's commanding 12.2 because we're in power enrichment and getting into boost enrichment. And our actual AFR measured on the wideband is a little rich, but we're at 11.67. So this orange line here is our manifold pressure, or our boost pressure. I put the injector duty cycle on here as well, but the line we really want to pay attention to is this orange line down here, as our boost pressure and injector duty cycle go up. So I'm just going to arrow over here and we'll watch what happens. Our RPM's getting up to about 3,000. Injector duty cycle's 15. Boost is coming up. This orange line is our boost, like I said before. Fuel pressure's still good, 58.56. So let's go up a little more. Now we're getting into about 3 or 4 pounds of boost, and you can see this is our peak fuel pressure here. Oops, now things scrolled back on me for some reason, but anyways, so you can see right here we are at 62.34 psi of fuel pressure, and about 22% duty cycle on our injectors, and 123 kPa, and there's about 7 kPa in a psi. So yeah, we're right around 3 to 4 pounds of boost. And right at this point, the fuel pump just can't keep up anymore. And you'll see as we go a bit higher, now we're getting close to 4,000 RPM and 131 kPa and 26% duty cycle. You can see our fuel pressure starting to drop here. And as we go over a bit more, you can see now we're at, what is that, 40 kPa of boost. So 6 pounds, and our fuel pressure has dropped to 48. But our AFR is still okay here, but you can see right about here is where we switched from being a little on the rich side to fuel pump not being able to keep up at all and going too lean. So at 50% duty cycle, and almost said booty cycle there. Yeah, 50% duty cycle, 5,300 RPM, and 154 kPa of boost. We just can't. Fuel pump's not keeping up anymore. And you can see our AFR starts going to the wrong side of this reference line. So right now we're right on target, commanding 12.2 AFR, and we're actually at 12.1. But if we arrow over a bit more, you can see we start going lean. And right here we're commanding 12.2 and we're actually at 13.9. And if you look at our fuel pressure, we are down 30 pounds from where we're supposed to be. Like, we should be well above 60, and we are at 27. So basically the fuel pump just isn't keeping up when our injector duty cycles get, like right here, we're at our peak injector duty cycle. Yeah, we're 66.7 and only got 27 pounds of fuel pressure. So that is why we need to install this new bigger fuel pump. So we'll get that fuel pump put in and then we'll do this test again, and I'm hoping we won't see this big drop in fuel pressure. So now we'll switch back to the garage view and get started putting in this fuel pump. Okay, so as you can see, we are out in the garage again on the workbench, and this is the bucket and fuel pump and level sender assembly out of my truck. If you want to see how I pulled that out, you can watch the last video. I pulled out the tank and pulled this assembly out of the tank. And unfortunately, when I was taking it apart, I broke this hose barb off. So I've got a new, straight from China, this pump from Amazon, and you can see it's quite a bit taller than the one that come out of the truck, but I think it'll still work because this compresses down, so it's, I don't know, maybe an inch taller or so than the one that came out. And this one does not go to the bottom of the tank, so I think we'll have room to put that one in the tank. But I am going to show how to take this one apart though, in case you guys aren't working on one of those aftermarket ones. We'll show how to disassemble this assembly, and then we'll put in this Walbro 525 Hellcat pump, and we've got that little parts installation kit too. So first thing we'll do to take this apart is take this level sender off. So I'm going to set up the camera in a tripod here so I've got both hands to work with, and then we'll take this apart. But basically there's this little black tab here. You gotta squeeze it here. I got some needle nose right here. I'll probably squeeze those tabs together oh, it's getting away on me here. Anyways, I'll squeeze those tabs together like that, and then pull this black piece out of there, and then I believe this whole assembly just slides out. So we'll set up the camera here and get working on that. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to squeeze these clips in on this black tab, and then it's actually a little bit tricky. I'll try to get a, oh, there it goes. So we'll pull that out, and then squeeze these two tabs together, and that level sender assembly comes out. Pull these two wires out of here for this level sender assembly. Probably blocking the view of the camera here, but so that just pulls out of there like that. And then there's two tabs on the side of the bucket here that you press in, and then that whole thing comes out of the bucket just like that. And oh, look at, I don't know if you can see all that dirt and stuff in there, but anyways, we'd have to modify this to get the new fuel pump in there. So you'd either have to, I know some guys Dremel in the bottom there and make room for that pump, but I'm almost thinking I would maybe cut the bottom right off it. So now we'll have a look at this one I got from Amazon here. But anyways, that's how you take apart the factory bucket. Now I'll get this Amazon one out and we'll have a look at that one and figure out how we're going to put this Walbro pump in there. Okay, so here's that pump I got from Amazon. I don't even know the part number. I just typed in Silverado fuel pump or something. And it is a little bit different. Like this, the factory one had 2 connectors for that evap pressure sensor. And this one doesn't have that. But it doesn't matter because I'm not using that anyways. So we'll go ahead and take this one apart like we did the other one. So pull these wires out for the sending unit. And same deal here, there's a couple little plastic clips. Where's my needle nose at? Gotta squeeze those together. Pull this plastic piece out. Squeeze those clips together. And then, in theory, should come out of there. Oh, I might have to, I think this piece is in the way, so we'll take this bucket apart first. Same deal, there's a couple clips in here that you gotta release. And that comes apart. And now that we've got this pulled away further, now we can take that sending unit out of there. So there we go. And there we have that. We're not actually going to use this pump. We're going to put in that Walbro one, but it just kind of comes out of the hanger there like that. So I think what I'm going to do, I'll try and get this hose off of here, and we'll cut these wires and splice this connector for the Walbro pump onto these wires here. Okay, so I got that cheap pump out of there, and I ended up having to, I don't know if you can see that there, but basically I had to cut this hose off of the pump and off of that barb right there. And I also noticed with this new Walbro pump, there's a little ledge in these 4 plastic, I don't know, ribs or whatever you want to call them in there. And this Walbro pump sits in there just nicely and hits that ledge. But the tricky part is going to be figuring out how to get the fuel filter on there. So next thing I'm going to do is open up this install kit that came with, or that I ordered with the Walbro pump, this 400 1168 fuel pump electric component kit. So I'm going to see what's in there and have a look at this filter and figure out how we're going to get this fuel filter mounted to this Walbro pump. Because I could just run it the way it is without the filter, but I think there's a way through this. I think this is a little check valve type thing, and I think it could suck unfiltered fuel into that pump, which I don't really want to do. So we'll open this bag up and see what we can find in there. Okay, so here's everything that comes in that installation kit. There's a connector assembly, which I don't think I'm going to need because I've got this little pigtail and hose clamps and the filter. And the filter just goes on the right on the bottom of that pump. So there's a couple modifications I'm going to need to make. I think if I make an L-shaped cut on this bucket like that, basically the bottom of this Walbro pump will sit kind of right around where that cut is, and then the filter should be able to stick out the side here, kind of like that. So I'm going to cut that out just with a Sawzall. And then the other thing I noticed is on this hanger assembly here, in order for the top of this fuel pump to fit through, I've got to get rid of these little tabs and stuff here. So I found a hole saw that is just the right size that I should be able to get in there and hole saw all that extra stuff out of there. And then I also noticed that this rubber piece that came on the old pump will fit on this as well, so we'll put that on there. So that's all I'll do now. Hole saw all this extra plastic out of here so the top of this pump can come up through that hanger, and then we'll cut away part of this bucket so that the bottom of the Walbro pump can hang down there and the filter can stick out the side. Okay, so I got that extra plastic hole sawed out of there, so that's wide open now. And I got that rubber jacket or whatever you want to call it on the Walbro pump, so that fits in there like that. The bad news is when I was cutting this L-shaped piece out, got a little too aggressive and busted that bucket in half. So let me put this piece on here, and this will actually kind of give a cutaway view of how that Walbro pump fits in there. So let me put that together, and I'll put the camera back on in a minute. So this is kind of that cutaway view where the bucket is broken apart, and you can see how that Walbro pump just sits on that little lip where I cut the bucket off, and then the top of it sticks out, and it has that rubber thing around to insulate it, I guess, and dampen the sound. So we're gonna have to splice up them wires and put the filter on, and then I'll put this other piece of the bucket on. Alright, so as you saw in that last clip, I ended up breaking this bucket apart for that fuel pump. So obviously me and plastic don't get along, because that's 2 videos in a row where I've broken something that's plastic. But basically what I'm gonna do to fix this, since I don't want to order another one of these cheap Chinese fuel pumps from Amazon, I'm gonna put that together like that, and then I've just got a piece of this plumbing strapping, and I'm gonna rivet that to hold this bucket together. And so I'm gonna have to go below this round piece. So basically I'm going to put one of these straps on this side, and then same thing on the other side right there, I guess. This one's going to be a little trickier because of that fuel sender here, but let me try to set that up there. I don't know, maybe we'll try, I don't know, get the strap in there or something like that. And then I just got some little pop rivets here to hold that strapping in. So we'll get that bucket put together now. Okay, so as you can see, I've got that bucket riveted back together like so. So now we're gonna take the Walbro pump and put it into, so it's sitting up against those tabs there. We can look at it from the bottom here too. You can see those little tabs that the pump will sit in. So we're going to set the Walbro pump in there, and then put this filter on the bottom of it. So it'll be basic. Oh, let me grab the camera here, kind of. So it'll basically be sitting like that with the pump in that recessed part there. So I'll put that together now. And there you can see I've got that Walbro pump in there, and the filter just sticks out of the bottom where I cut it there, and then this will still sit on the floor of the tank like that, and the level sender will still latch into here and hopefully should still indicate the correct level. So now we'll put the top of this together. We'll put this rubber sleeve around that Walbro pump, and then put this upper whatever you call that part of the hanger assembly. We'll put this all together, put the sending unit on, and then we'll work on hooking up the wiring. So we'll do that now. Alright, so I got that rubber boot around the Walbro pump, and we're going to put it together just like that. But before we snap it all the way together, we need to put the sending unit, and it goes around the other way. So basically it's got to slide on right there, and it won't fit on once we get this together because of that piece right there. So we'll slide that on there and then get this all together. Okay, we got that sending unit snapped in there, and this bucket snapped down, or the upper part of the hanger snapped down into the bucket. So that's what that modified bucket assembly is going to look like when we put it into the tank. So now shouldn't have to do anything with these sending unit wires, but we're going to have to connect this black and gray wire. We'll basically splice this connector, which goes into here. We'll splice that onto this black and gray wire. So probably cut some off of there and some off of here and get those spliced together. Alright, so I got, like I said, I cut a little bit off of the black and gray wiring. I don't know what happened to the little connector that was on it, but I cut off that little connector in a couple inches, and then cut a couple inches off of the red and black on this, and just butt spliced them together. And I left a bit of a loop here because this is going to have to compress and extend a certain amount. So like I said, this one is longer than the factory one, so I think it's going to have to compress even more. So I just kind of left a little bit of extra wire there so we can make some adjustments. So what we're going to do now though is hook up the fuel hose here. So I've got the one that came with this install kit, and even this, I think I'm going to have to compress it a bit to get it to get this hose to work, but I don't think that'll be a problem. So I'm going to put this hose, connect one end to this hose barb on top of the Walbro pump, and the other end to this hose barb on the hanger, and put these hose clamps on. And then we should be, I've also got to put on this float for the level sender here. It just snaps into that little arm, and that's like a little potentiometer there that varies the resistance as your fuel level goes up and down. So we'll get that all put together, and then we'll be ready to drop this into the tank. Okay, you can see I got that hose, there's the bottom of it hooked up, and there's the top of it right there. So fuel hose is hooked up. I put a zip tie just to kind of keep the wires somewhat together, but I didn't make it super tight so they can still move if we have to. And then I've got this level sender float on, and I got my multimeter hooked up to it here. So with the float in its lowest point, we got 40 ohms, and we'll just verify that as we lift this float up, you can see I'm bringing it down, goes back down to 40, and with it all the way up, we are at about 250 ohms. And that is what we're supposed to see back down to the bottom and up to the top. So that's working the way it should. The only thing, I'm going to have to take that float off again because there's a seal that goes around up top here. So I've got to slide that over this whole assembly, so I've got to take that float arm off again. And between these other two wires here, you should have like close to zero for resistance because you're measuring the winding of that Walbro pump. So I guess I can hook up. I'll have to do it with one hand here, but you'll notice, yeah, there's two bigger wires, this gray one and this black one are the ones for the fuel pump, and then the smaller, this purple and this black, are the ones for the level sender. So now I'm going to hook up to the two bigger wires, the bigger gray and the black, and I'm measuring just to make sure I've got a good connection and stuff here and got the right wires. So measuring the winding of the pump there. And so these two wires will hook up to the pump, and these two wires will hook up to the level sender. So I'll put this seal around there, and we should be able to drop it in the tank and then get it all wired up. I just got it sitting on my drill here because of that section I cut out. It won't stand up by itself, so just got it sitting on my drill there, so it'll stand up for demonstration, but pretty well ready to drop her in the tank. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to show you guys before we drop this assembly in the tank. This new fuel pump assembly doesn't come with these little clips. Like here you can see this is the hose barb that I broke off of the old fuel pump, and basically I'm having to take the clips off of the old fuel pump and put it on this new assembly. So basically just got to take a screwdriver and carefully, with my luck with plastic, I'll probably break these too, but I did get this one off successfully. You basically got to pry up these two little tabs. There's one there, and if you turn it around, well, there you can see one on the bottom and one on the top. So you got to pry those up gently, and then this little clip will slide off. And then same thing, if I can actually this is the main fuel line here. We'll take this one and slide it on there just like that. So I'll pry this one off and put it on that line, and then the vent line in the middle here doesn't have one of those clips. So put that on, and then we'll drop this thing into the tank. And I did get this gasket or seal put on there too. So once I get that little clip on, we'll be ready to put her in the tank. Alright, so surprisingly enough, I did get those plastic clips on there without breaking anything. So now we're ready to drop this into the tank. So you gotta wiggle that sender around there, and I'm gonna have to just kind of stuff that filter from the Walbro in there. And there's a kind of an alignment tab there that fits into that little notch. So that is in there. Now we'll grab that ring and kind of fasten it down into there, and then we can work on getting the hoses hooked up and the wiring hooked up, and eventually get that fuel tank back up underneath the truck. Okay, so we got that lock ring back on, and again there's a little tab that once you get it tightened into place there, that tab should engage this little notch here to keep it from backing off. We got our hoses hooked back up. Again, that's our main fuel line. The center one is our vent. This one's our return line. And we got the wiring connector on there. And I'm just gonna run these wires and leave them hanging out the side of the fuel tank here. And once we get it mounted back onto the truck, I'll be able to access them to hook up the wiring. So now I got a transmission jack ready to go. So we've got to flip this tank 180 because you can see the filler hose there needs to be coming out of where you put the gas in right there. So we'll flip this around 180, get her on the transmission jack, and then snake that filler hose up where it needs to be and work on getting this gas tank strapped back up into place. Okay, it was a bit of a wrestling match, but we've got that fuel tank back up under the truck. So just a few more loose ends. There's 3 screws around the filler neck here to hold that in. There's a ground strap underneath there to hook up this evap canister to put in. Fuel lines and stuff to hook up, but that's basically all going to be the reverse of what I did in the last video of taking everything out. So I'm going to get those loose ends buttoned up, and then we will work on connecting the wiring for this new fuel pump. So that's what we'll do now. Okay, so we're back under the truck. We got our evap canister back in, got all our fuel hoses and everything all hooked back up. And so now we'll start working on the wiring. There you can see our tank is back in place, and you can see that's the old plug that went to the factory fuel pump, and that's the wiring coming from that new fuel pump and fuel sender that I put in. So the 2 small wires there, the small purple and the small black wire, will hook up to, let me hang up my light here somewhere so I can. So like I said, these 2 small black and small purple are for the sending unit, so they will hook up to this small, it's purple and orange in the factory harness. So purple, I don't think it actually matters the polarity because that's just a resistor, but we'll hook up the purple to that purple wire and the orange to the small black wire there. And then these 2 bigger wires in the harness were the power for the factory fuel pump, but they're not going to be big enough to supply power. This Walbro pump draws like 24 amps or something, so we need number 10 wire. So basically, I think this is like a protective plate for the fuel tank, but there's enough space in between it and the fuel tank for mounting screws. So basically I'm going to mount a relay here, and then I'm going to follow this wiring that I already ran. Grab my light again, but basically ran all the way up. You can see it going up into the engine bay there. I'm going to run number 10 red and black basically from the battery, and then I'm gonna mount a relay in here, and these 2 wires that used to power the factory fuel pump are gonna turn on and off that relay that will control our new fuel pump. So next thing I'm gonna do is, like I said, run a number 10 red and black from the engine compartment up near the battery to this area at the side or top of the fuel tank here. Alright, so now that we got the fuel pump in the tank and the tank back under the truck and all the lines hooked up, we're going to look at doing the electrical part. So I'm just going to go over the parts I'm going to use. So I've got some, hands a little dirty there apparently, 10 gauge red wire, 10 gauge black wire, a 30 amp fuse, so this is going to come right off the battery. Or there's, if we go over to the truck, there's I think there's a terminal underneath that red cover there. So basically the negative is going to come right off the negative post on the battery, and I think the positive is going to come, let's see if I can get that opened up. Yeah, I'll take the positive terminal of that fuse and put it right under that bolt, and then we'll go run our wires to the fuel pump there. So, and then at the fuel pump end, I've got this 30/40 amp relay, and I might not even use this socket that it's plugged in. So I got these number 10 gauge, basically a female quick connect that would plug right onto this relay. So now we'll run this red and black wire from the battery area down to the fuel tank area underneath the truck. Alright, so I got this red and black wire ran down underneath the truck, basically following the same route I took with this wire for my fuel pressure sensor, and I've got it ran all the way down to the fuel tank. So we'll tie in the fuel tank end first, and then we'll hook up the end at the battery here. But first, let's go over and we'll look at this relay that's going to be controlling the power to the new fuel pump. So it did come with this socket here, but I'm not going to use that. But we'll just look at the diagram on the side of this relay here. So 85 and 86 are the coil of this relay. So that's on this one there. The pins are like a lighter color, but anyways, it's these two outside pins here, 85 and 86. So the wires that did go to the factory fuel pump will now go to these two terminals on the outside here. So when the ECM calls for the fuel pump to come on, it'll energize this relay. And then the power from the battery is going to go to terminal 30, which is this one that's on a different angle right here. And then we want that fuel pump to be energized when the coil is energized, so we want it to be hooked up to 87. So, and 87 is this outside pin here. So power and ground will go to these two. The big number 10 from the battery will go to this number 30 terminal, and the wire going to the fuel pump will go to this 87 terminal. So let's hop under the truck now and get this little relay wired up. And I'm gonna use these little female spade, and then I've got some other ones here that for the smaller wires. So we'll go under the truck now and show you that end of it. Okay, we're under the truck now, and like I said, I ran a red and black wire. We're over by the fuel tank here, and I already spliced up the wires for that sending unit, and like I said, hooked up purple to purple and the black to the orange wire here. Now I'm going to cut this connector off, and these will go to the 85 and 86 on that little relay. The black wire will just get butt spliced right straight through, and then the red wire coming from the battery will go to number 30 on that relay, and the gray wire going to the fuel pump will go to number 87. So I'll get that all connected now. Alright, and there is that little relay installed, and that red and black wire from the battery. I just put some zip ties and screws to keep it away from the drive shaft. And like I said, this gray and black wire originally powered the fuel pump. Now they go to energize the coil of this relay. This red wire comes from the battery, goes to terminal 30, and then this wire comes from terminal 87 to power up the fuel pump. Here's my 2 wires for the sending unit. So that should wrap things up underneath the truck here. So now we'll go up to the battery and tie in the wiring on that end. Alright, now we're up under the hood and I'm just finishing up the wiring here. You can see I ran it up the brake lines, put a couple zip ties to tie it to the inner fender, and then the ground just goes up here to the negative terminal on the battery, and the positive, I put this fuse holder in here off of that stud right there, and then I just spliced the red wire onto it here. So I think all we got to do is put a fuse in that I have there already, and we should be able to test this new fuel pump out. So I'll put that fuse in and we'll fire it up, and then I still got my gauge in here for so we can check the fuel pressure. And unfortunately it's middle of December in Canada here, so the roads are covered in snow and ice, so I can't really take it out, and you know, it's just a 2-wheel drive truck with a LS turbo. It's not exactly prime weather for it's not exactly a winter vehicle. So basically we'll just fire it up for now and verify that we have fuel pressure, and then we'll have to give it a test drive on the road when the weather is better. Alright, so I got the fuse in the fuse holder there, so let's fire this thing up. So that was interesting. We had about, as you can see, the truck fired up, no problem, but we had about 90 pounds of fuel pressure there, so I'm almost wondering if we might need to, well, it was running, so I don't know. I think we got to take it out on the road and see how it'll do. But at idle anyways, the fuel pressure seems pretty high, so you can tell that new fuel pump is putting out a bunch. And that is how you install the Walbro 525 Hellcat fuel pump in a 2000 Chevy Silverado. Yeah, like I said, it's putting out a lot of pressure at idle, so we'll have to wait till it warms up and the roads dry up a bit, and then we may end up having to change the fuel pressure regulator or something, but we'll see what our fuel pressure does when it's under full throttle and making boost and all that. So we'll wrap it up for this one. Thanks for watching. It's getting close to Christmas, so if I don't put out another video before Christmas, you guys have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching and liking and subscribing, and we're getting close to 2,000 subscribers, so thanks a lot for supporting the channel. Looking forward to going hard in the new year and getting this thing on the track. So have a good one. We'll talk to you on the next one.